For centuries, the galaxy mocked humanity. They called us primitive, weak, violent, a species trapped on a small blue world at the edge of known space. The great alien empires possessed technology millions of years ahead of ours. They controlled star systems, commanded planet-sized fleets, and shaped the destiny of entire civilizations. To them, humanity was a joke. But they made one mistake. They believed Earth's silence was weakness. They never realized humanity was watching, learning, preparing. And when the galaxy finally pushed too far, Earth unleashed something that changed the fate of the universe forever. The Galactic Council had gathered for what was supposed to be a routine meeting. Representatives from over 3,000 civilizations filled the chamber. Yet the topic on everyone's mind was the same: Earth. Not because humanity was important. Because humanity had become the galaxy's favorite joke. The delegates laughed as old recordings appeared on the central hologram, videos of human wars, political conflicts, and primitive rocket launchers from centuries earlier. To them, Earth was a backward world barely capable of reaching its own moon. But hidden beneath those smiles and laughter was a secret no alien had discovered. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, inside mountains, and scattered throughout the solar system, humanity had been building something in complete silence. Something that would soon make every alien empire regret underestimating the human race. While the Galactic Council laughed, a classified meeting was taking place beneath Antarctica. Nearly 4 kilometers under the ice, hidden inside a fortress carved into ancient bedrock, humanity's greatest minds watched the alien broadcast in silence. No one laughed, because they knew something the galaxy did not. For 200 years, Earth had secretly transformed itself. Every insult, every threat, every attempt by alien powers to keep humanity isolated had pushed the human race toward a single goal: preparation. The enormous chamber trembled as a holographic map of the galaxy illuminated the darkness. Thousands of red markers appeared across known space. Each marker represented a hidden human installation. Research stations, shipyards, listening posts, defense networks. The project had one name: Project Aegis. Officially, humanity possessed only a modest fleet capable of defending nearby colonies. Unofficially, Earth controlled the largest military-industrial network ever built by a young civilization. Deep beneath oceans, inside asteroids, and within hollowed moons, automated factories had spent decades constructing vessels no alien intelligence had ever detected. Human leaders knew a simple truth: one day, the galaxy's arrogance would become a threat. And when that day arrived, humanity would need more than courage. They would need power. Suddenly, an alarm echoed through the chamber. A fleet belonging to the powerful alien Dominion had entered a neutral star system near human territory. The Dominion was famous for bullying weaker civilizations. Normally, humanity ignored such provocations, but this time was different. The fleet wasn't stopping. It was heading directly toward an independent human colony. The room fell silent. For generations, Earth had remained hidden, patient or careful. Watching. Now the first real test had arrived. The question was no longer whether humanity was ready. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity. The colony world of Haven 12 had never seen war. Located on the outer edge of human-controlled space, it was a peaceful agricultural settlement where millions of people lived simple lives beneath twin golden suns. But that peace was about to end. Orbiting high above the planet, long-range sensors detected the approaching Dominion fleet: 137 warships, cruisers, destroyers, carrier vessels. Enough firepower to erase the colony within hours. Across Haven 12, emergency sirens echoed through cities and farming regions. Families rushed toward shelters, while local defense forces prepared for what seemed like an impossible battle. The colony governor immediately transmitted a distress signal to Earth. Then the waiting began. Meanwhile, aboard the Dominion flagship, Supreme Commander Varric stared at the blue-green planet below and smiled. To him, humans were insignificant. The Dominion had conquered hundreds of worlds over thousands of years. Humanity was merely another species that needed to learn its place. Transmit our demands, he ordered. Moments later, a message reached Haven 12. Surrender all orbital infrastructure, Accept Dominion authority. Pay tribute. Or face destruction. The governor's response was short. No. Laughter erupted throughout the Dominion command bridge. One tiny colony. One impossible refusal. Commander Varix shook his head. Prepare the fleet. Weapons systems across the Armada powered up. Missile bays opened, energy cannons glowed. Fighter squadrons launched into formation. Everything appeared normal, until a strange signal suddenly appeared on Dominion scanners. At first, operators believed it was a malfunction. Then another signal appeared, and another. Anda noter. Thousands of unknown contacts were emerging from deep space. The bridge fell silent. Commander Varix leaned forward. Identify them. The answer arrived seconds later. The officer's face turned pale. Sir, they're human. Varix frowned. Impossible. Human fleets in this sector are limited to a few patrol groups. The officer swallowed nervously. Not these ships, sir. The tactical display zoomed outward. Everyone on the bridge froze. The darkness of space was filling with warships. Hundreds. Then thousands, then tens of thousands. Entire regions of empty space suddenly came alive as hidden human vessels emerged from stealth positions that had remained undetected for decades. Massive battleships, Titan-class carriers, unknown superstructures larger than anything the Dominion had ever encountered. Humanity had not sent a rescue fleet. Humanity had revealed an armada. And for the first time in his military career, Commander Varix felt fear. The galaxy had laughed at humanity. Now the laughter was beginning to die. The Dominion fleet had fought hundreds of wars. Its commanders had faced ancient empires, machine civilizations, and even species that could manipulate the fabric of space itself. But nothing in their history had prepared them for what they were witnessing now. The tactical display continued updating. Every second, more human ships appeared. The number climbed past 20,000, then 30,000. Then 40,000. Commander Varix stared in disbelief. How could this exist? He whispered. For centuries, the galaxy's intelligence agencies had monitored humanity, every shipyard, every colony, every military exercise, or so they thought. Now, it became painfully clear that humanity had allowed the galaxy to see only what it wanted them to see. The real fleet had remained hidden. Waiting, watching, preparing. Across the Dominion Armada, fear spread rapidly. Officers who had once laughed at humans now exchanged nervous glances. Even the most experienced veterans could feel the balance of power shifting. Then a transmission arrived, not from Earth, not from Haven 12, from the massive flagship at the center of the newly revealed human fleet. The image of a human admiral appeared on every Dominion screen. His expression was calm, his voice steady. There will be no attack on Haven 12. Commander Varix narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening the Dominion? The admiral shook his head. No. For a moment, confusion filled the bridge, and then the human continued. We are informing you. Silence to absolute silence. No angel. No shouting, no dramatic speech. Just certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from overwhelming confidence. Behind the admiral, enormous human warships drifted through space like moving continents. Some were so large they blocked entire sections of the starfield. Others carried weapons unlike anything in known galactic databases. The Dominion's AI systems worked frantically to analyze them. Every report returned the same conclusion. Unknown. Unknown to unknown to unknown. For the first time in Dominion history, their technology could not understand what stood before them. Suddenly another alert flashed across the bridge. A massive energy reading, then another, then hundreds more. Deep within the human armada, giant structures began activating. Brilliant blue light spread across space. Reality itself appeared to bend around them. Scientists aboard the Dominion flagship stared in horror. One finally spoke. Sir, Varix looked toward him. The scientist's hands trembled. Those aren't weapons. Then what are they? The answer chilled every soul on the bridge. They're shipyards. The display zoomed closer. The Dominion officers watched in disbelief as gigantic automated factories emerged from hidden dimensions. Thousands of unfinished human warships were being assembled in real time. Entire fleets were being built before their eyes. Humanity wasn't showing the limits of its power. Humanity was showing that it had no visible limits. And somewhere across the galaxy, the first rumors of Haven 12 were already spreading. The species everyone mocked was far stronger than anyone had imagined. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Within hours, every major civilization had received the same intelligence report. Humanity possessed a hidden armada. At first, many leaders refused to believe it. Surely the reports were exaggerated. Surely the Dominion had made a mistake. After all, humans were newcomers to the galactic stage. They had only recently begun expanding beyond their home system. How could a young species build a force powerful enough to challenge one of the oldest empires in known space? Yet as more evidence arrived, denial became impossible. Observatories confirmed the sightings. Long-range sensors verified the fleet movements. Independent traders reported seeing enormous human formations moving through deep space. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council entered a state of emergency. Inside the council chamber, thousands of delegates sat in stunned silence. This was not the same chamber that had mocked humanity only days earlier. The laughter was gone. The jokes were gone. Now there was only uncertainty. A massive holographic display showed the latest intelligence gathered from Haven 12. The image revealed endless ranks of human warships surrounding the colony. The numbers were difficult to comprehend. Even ancient civilizations that had ruled star systems for millennia struggled to understand how humanity had hidden such a force. An elderly alien delegate finally spoke. How long have they been preparing? No one answered because no one knew. Far away from the council, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Sarah Kane stood before a panoramic observation window. Thousands of stars stretched across the darkness. Behind them drifted the largest fleet ever assembled by humanity. Yet Kane wasn't celebrating. She understood something the galaxy did not. The Armada was not humanity's greatest achievement. It was merely a shield, a precaution, a contingency plan. The real project remained hidden. Even most human citizens knew nothing about it. Only a handful of leaders possessed full clearance. And if the galaxy ever discovered the truth, today's panic would seem insignificant by comparison. Back at Haven 12, Commander Verix faced an impossible decision. His fleet remained vastly outnumbered. Any attempt to attack would result in immediate destruction. Yet, retreating would be seen as humiliation. Dominion history had never recorded such a defeat. Hours passed as Verix studied the tactical reports. Every scenario ended the same way. Failure. The human fleet wasn't merely stronger. It was operating on an entirely different level. Finally, Verix issued the order, withdraw. The command bridge fell silent. Generations of Dominion commanders had spent centuries expanding their empire. Now, for the first time, a Dominion invasion force was retreating without firing a shot. Not because it lacked courage, because it lacked hope. As the alien fleet turned away from Haven 12, celebrations erupted across the colony. Families emerged from shelters. Children returned to the streets. The threat had passed. But the larger consequences were only beginning. Across thousands of worlds, citizens watched news broadcasts showing the Dominion retreat. For many civilizations, it was the first time they had ever seen a major empire back down. And the reason was always the same. Humanity. The species that everyone had laughed at. The species they called primitive. The species they underestimated. For centuries, the galaxy had looked down on Earth. Now, for the first time, the galaxy was beginning to look up. And hidden deep within the darkness between the stars, humanity's greatest secret was slowly approaching completion. When it was finally revealed, the entire universe would change forever. The Dominion's retreat sent shockwaves through the galaxy. For centuries, powerful empires had maintained control through fear. Entire civilizations obeyed because resistance seemed impossible, but now the impossible had happened. A young species from a small blue world had forced one of the galaxy's greatest powers to back down. Across countless star systems, people began asking a dangerous question. If humanity could stand against the Dominion, why couldn't they? Rebellions started appearing almost immediately. Minor worlds that had paid tribute for generations suddenly refused. Independent colonies demanded freedom. Trade alliances once loyal to the Dominion began reconsidering their position. The balance of power was changing, and it was changing fast. Inside the Dominion capital, the High Emperor watched the reports with growing anger. The enormous throne chamber was silent. Nobody dared speak. A holographic projection showed the retreat from Haven 12 again and again. Each replay felt like another humiliation. Finally, the Emperor slammed his fist against the armrest. The impact echoed through the chamber. One colony, he growled. One insignificant colony forced an entire Dominion fleet to retreat. No one answered, because the truth was worse. It wasn't one colony, it was humanity. And nobody knew the full extent of human power. Meanwhile, deep inside the solar system, a classified vessel traveled toward a destination that did not officially exist. The ship passed Mars, then Jupiter. Then the distant outer regions where few civilizations ever ventured. Finally, an enormous structure appeared. The crew members stared in awe despite having seen it before. The object stretched millions of kilometers across space. It was so large that sensors initially mistook it for a natural phenomenon, a second star, a small nebula. A strange cosmic anomaly, but it was none of those things, it was human. The project carried a simple name, Eclipse. For nearly 2 centuries, countless factories hidden throughout the solar system had worked continuously on its construction. The Armada protecting Haven 12 was impressive. Eclipse was something else entirely, something far beyond a fleet. Far beyond a weapon. Far beyond anything the galaxy believed possible. As the vessel approached, giant sections of the structure illuminated one by one. Entire cities were visible along its surface. Artificial oceans reflected distant starlight. Massive industrial complexes operated around the clock. Millions of people lived and worked inside the structure. It was not a ship. It was a moving civilization, a world built by human hands. And construction was not yet complete. Back on Earth, Admiral Sarah Kane received a secure transmission. The message contained only 3 words. Phase to authorized. For the first time in years, Kane smiled. The galaxy believed it had discovered humanity's secret, the hidden Armada, the advanced warships at the impossible shipyards. But those were merely distractions. The truth was far larger, far older, and far more ambitious. Humanity had never planned to survive inside the galaxy. Humanity had been preparing to reshape it. As stars burned in the distance and empires argued in fear, Project Eclipse continued growing in silence. And somewhere among the countless worlds of the Milky Way, an ancient force had finally noticed what humanity was building. Something that had remained asleep for millions of years. Something even the Galactic Council feared. And it was beginning to wake up. The first sign came from the edge of the galaxy. A research station orbiting a dead star transmitted an emergency report before going silent. The message contained only one sentence. Something is moving in the dark. At first, nobody paid attention. The galaxy was already consumed by the growing crisis surrounding humanity. Governments argued. Empires mobilized fleets. Intelligence agencies desperately searched for more information about Project Eclipse. The report was buried beneath thousands of other alerts. Then a second station disappeared. And a third, and a fourth. Entire sectors began falling silent. No distress calls, no battles, no survivors. Just silence. Inside the Galactic Council, panic slowly replaced confusion. Investigators discovered a disturbing pattern. Every missing station was located near the outer rim of the Milky Way. Something was moving inward, Something enormous. Ancient records were immediately unlocked. Files sealed for millions of years. Knowledge forbidden even among the oldest civilizations. For most delegates, it was the first time they had heard the name. The Voidborn. According to legend, the Voidborn existed before modern civilizations evolved, before empires, before recorded history. Some claimed they were living machines. Others believed they were creatures born between galaxies. Nobody knew the truth. What everyone agreed on was far simpler. Where the Voidborn appeared, civilizations disappeared. Far away, aboard the human flagship Resolute, Admiral Sarah Kane studied the same reports. Unlike the Council, she wasn't surprised. Human intelligence had been monitoring unusual activity beyond the galactic rim for decades. Project Eclipse had never been designed solely to counter alien empires. The real threat was always something else, something bigger. Humanity had enscongo reneth worlds. Dead civilizations. Ancient warnings carved into abandoned megastructures. The signs all pointed to one conclusion: the Voidborn were real. And they were returning. Deep inside Project Eclipse, scientists gathered in the central core. The enormous chamber stretched for kilometers. A glowing holographic galaxy floated above them. Red warning symbols began spreading across the outer regions. The projections showed hundreds of stars suddenly going dark. Entire systems were vanishing, not destroyed, consumed. One scientist broke the silence. They're moving faster than predicted. Another nodded. At this rate, they'll reach populated space within 2 years. The room became silent. Everyone understood what that meant. The galaxy was completely unprepared. Its empires spent centuries fighting each other while humanity prepared for the future. Now that future had arrived. Meanwhile, near the galactic rim, a lonely observation probe captured the first clear image. The transmission reached thousands of worlds and immediately triggered widespread panic. The object filled half the screen. A gigantic black structure larger than a planet. Its surface appeared alive, moving, changing. Countless glowing red lights covered its exterior. Behind it came thousands more. An endless swarm stretching across the darkness between stars. Entire fleets of Voidborn vessels. Each one capable of destroying worlds. Each one moving toward the heart of the galaxy. Bike on Earth emergency. Alarms activated across military command centers. Governments declared planetary defense status. Fleet commanders received sealed orders. Project Eclipse accelerated to maximum production. For generations, humanity had prepared for this moment. Now the countdown had begun. The galaxy believed humanity's hidden armada was the greatest surprise waiting among the stars. They were wrong. The armada was only the shield. Project Eclipse was only the sword. And the war that would decide the fate of every civilization was finally about to begin. The image of the Voidborn spread across the galaxy within hours. Worlds that had spent centuries competing against one another suddenly forgot their rivalries. Stock markets collapsed. Colonies declared states of emergency. Civilian traffic overwhelmed communication networks. For the first time in recorded history, billions of beings shared the same emotion. Fear. Not fear of invasion, not fear of war. Fear of extinction. Inside the Galactic Council, emergency sessions continued day and night. The greatest military leaders of thousands of civilizations gathered beneath the enormous dome of the council chamber. A holographic map displayed the latest situation. The results were catastrophic. Every fleet sent to investigate the Voidborn had vanished. Entire armadas disappeared without leaving a single distress signal. Even the most advanced probes failed to return. The Council's greatest scientists finally reached a conclusion. The galaxy's combined military strength would not be enough. Silence filled the chamber. For millions of years, the Council had considered itself the ultimate authority in the Milky Way. Now, it faced an enemy beyond its comprehension. An enemy older than history itself. Then an unexpected transmission arrived. The sender identification shocked everyone. Earth. Thousands of delegates, immediately turned toward the central hologram. The image of Admiral Sarah Kane appeared once again. But this time her expression was different. There was no warning, no negotiation. Only urgenki. The Voidborn will reach inhabited space sooner than expected. A nervous delegate interrupted. Can humanity stop them? Kane paused. The entire galaxy waited for her answer. Finally she spoke. We don't know. The chamber became completely silent. If humanity, the species that had secretly built impossible fleets and megastructures, was uncertain, then the threat was even worse than anyone imagined. Far beyond the solar system, Project Eclipse entered its final operational phase. Gigantic shipyards glowed brighter than stars. Automated factories worked continuously. Millions of engineers monitored the enormous structure. The project that had consumed generations was finally approaching completion. At the center of Eclipse lay something no alien civilization had ever seen. A machine so vast that entire cities existed inside its framework, a machine designed for a single purpose: to fight the Voidborn. Meanwhile, at the edge of the galaxy, the first major battle occurred. A coalition fleet of nearly 50,000 warships intercepted a small Voidborn scouting force. For a moment, Operatornetico possessed overwhelmers. Victory seemed certain. Then the battle began. Witnesses later described it as a massacre. The Voidborn ships moved through space like living predators. Energy weapons barely slowed them. Missiles vanished against strange gravitational distortions. Entire squadrons disappeared within seconds. Within 23 minutes, the coalition fleet ceased. Only drifting wreckage remained. The scouting force continued moving toward the galactic core, untouched. Unstoppably. The battle report reached Earth 3 hours later. Military commanders watched the footage in silence. No one needed to explain what it meant. The galaxy was running out of time. Project Eclipse was humanity's last chance, not just for Earth. Voidborn. As stars burned across the darkness and countless civilizations prepared for war, the massive structure hidden beyond the solar system continued awakening. Ancient reactors roared to life. Gigantic systems activated one after another. And deep within the heart of Eclipse, something began to move. Something that humanity had spent centuries building. Something powerful enough to challenge a species that consumed entire galaxies. For the first time, even the Voidborn might soon discover what happened when humanity stopped hiding its true strength. The awakening of Project Eclipse could be seen from across the solar system. For the first time in 2 centuries, humanity stopped hiding. Gigantic energy beams erupted from the structure's surface, stretching across millions of kilometers of space. Ancient reactors generated power levels that exceeded the output of entire star systems. Around Eclipse, thousands of shipyards ceased production. Their work was finished. The final stage had begun. Across Earth, Mars, and humanity's distant colonies, every screen carried the same message: Project Eclipse Online. Millions watched in silence. Many had never even heard the project's name before. Now, they were witnessing the greatest engineering achievement in human history. Deep inside Eclipse, Admiral Sarah Kane entered the Central Command Core. The chamber was unlike anything ever built by humanity. Entire mountains could fit inside its interior. Countless holographic displays floated through the darkness. Engineers, scientists, and military officers worked around the clock. At the center of the room stood a glowing sphere representing the Milky Way. Red markers continued advancing inward, the Voidborn. They were getting closer. Every day more systems vanished. Every day more civilizations disappeared. Time was running out. Suddenly a transmission arrived from the galactic frontier. The signal was fragmented, distorted and barely recognizable. Yet the message was clear. A major civilization known as the Orinth Dominion had fallen. 12 inhabited worlds, gone. Billions of lives erased in less than a week. The footage that followed shocked even the most experienced commanders. Entire planets were being dismantled, not destroyed. Armadas. The Voidborn were stripping worlds apart and converting the material into new ships. Every victory made them stronger. Every fallen civilization increased their numbers. They were not merely invading the galaxy. They were consuming it. Back at the Galactic Council, panic reached unprecedented levels. Ancient empires that had once ruled thousands of systems were now evacuating their capitals. Refugee fleets filled major trade routes. Governments collapsed. Military alliances fractured. For the first time, the Council officially admitted the truth. The galaxy could not win alone. Humanity had become their last hope. The same species they had laughed at, the same species they had dismissed as primitive. Now every civilization looked toward Earth. Meanwhile, within the deepest levels of Eclipse, Security Clearance Omega was activated. Massive armored doors began opening. One after another, 1 kilometer thick. Then 2 kilometers thick, then 3. Behind them rested humanity's greatest secret, the reason Project Eclipse existed. The reason to centuries of preparation had been necessary. A machine unlike anything in the known universe. As the final containment barriers opened, brilliant blue light flooded the chamber. Scientists shielded their eyes. Military personnel stood frozen. Even Admiral Kane remained silent. The object before them dwarfed entire cities. Its surface shimmered with impossible energy patterns, and slowly, it began to awaken. Across the command center, alarms suddenly activated. A new Voidborn fleet had appeared. Not at the edge of the galaxy, not in deep space. But only a few months away from human territory, the enemy was arriving faster than predicted. The final battle was approaching, and for the first time, humanity would reveal the true purpose of Project Eclipse. The galaxy had laughed at humanity for centuries. Very soon, nobody would be laughing anymore. The chamber shook as the machine fully awakened. For 200 years, humanity had called it many things. The Shield, the last agency. But its official designation was far simpler. Titan. A silence fell across Project Eclipse as the colossal structure came alive. Entire continents of machinery shifted. Energy rivers flowed beneath transparent armored layers. Massive engines larger than moons ignited one by one. The machine was not a ship. It was not a station. It was not even a weapon. It was an artificial world designed specifically to fight the Voidborn. Every lesson humanity had learned over centuries of research had been built into its structure. Every failure, every warning, every prediction. All of it had led to this moment. Admiral Sarah Kane stood before the observation deck as Titan slowly moved for the first time. The sight was breathtaking. Millions of kilometers of superstructure illuminated the darkness. Entire fleets moved alongside it like tiny escorts accompanying a god. Even seasoned military officers struggled to comprehend its scale. Then the first combat report arrived. A major Voidborn invasion fleet had entered the Perseus corridor. The enemy was advancing directly toward populated regions. Hundreds of billions of lives were at risk. The galaxy watched anxiously. Would humanity finally deploy Titan? Across countless worlds, citizens gathered around screens. Alien children, human families, military leaders, scientists, refugees, everyone waited. The entire Milky Way held its breath. For the first time in history, all civilizations shared a common destiny, victory or extinction. There would be no middle ground. Inside Eclipse, the final authorization codes were entered. One by one, Titan's primary systems activated. Its massive defensive shields expanded across space. Weapons arrays powered up. Reality distortion engines came online. Entire sectors of space trembled under the machine's energy output. Sensors immediately detected the reaction. Even the Voidborn changed course. For the first time since entering the galaxy, they paused, as if they had finally noticed humanity. Thousands of years ago, the Voidborn had consumed civilizations far older and more powerful than the current galaxy. They had never encountered meaningful resistance. They were the predators. Everyone else was prey. But now something unexpected had appeared, something built specifically to stop them. Something willing to fight. A long-range observation probe captured the moment. The image spread instantly across the galaxy. On one side stood the endless Voidborn swarm, planet-killers, star-Devourers, living nightmares stretching beyond the horizon. On the other side stood Titan, surrounded by humanity's hidden armada, glowing like a second sun in the darkness, ready for war, ready for the final battle. As the distance between the two forces closed, Admiral Kane transmitted a message across every known communication network. Every world heard the same words. Every species heard the same promise. We did not build this for conquest. We did not build this for power. We built this so civilization would have a future. Then she looked toward the approaching Voidborn fleet and gave the order. Advance. Across space, Titan accelerated. Human warships followed. The galaxy watched in awe. The species that had once been mocked. The species that had once been ignored. The species everyone believed was weak. Was now leading the defense of the entire Milky Way. And as the first stars of the battlefield came into view, the greatest war in galactic history finally began. The war began with silence, no speeches. No dramatic declarations, no final warnings. Just to civilizations moving toward each other through the darkness of space. On one side stood the Voidborn swarm. On the other stood Titan and the human defense armada. For several minutes, the distance between them continued shrinking. Then the first shot was fired. A beam of crimson energy erupted from a Voidborn vessel and crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. The attack struck Titan's outer shield. The entire galaxy watched. The shield didn't even flicker. A collective gasp echoed across countless worlds. For the first time, a Voidborn attack had failed. The swarm reacted immediately. Thousands of Voidborn warships opened fire simultaneously. Red energy storms flooded space. Entire regions of the battlefield disappeared beneath overwhelming firepower. For a moment, observers feared the worst. Then Titan answered. Massive rings surrounding the artificial world began rotating. Blue energy surged through gigantic conduits. The machine released a pulse unlike anything ever recorded. A wave of light expanded outward. When it struck the enemy fleet, reality itself seemed to bend. Hundreds of Voidborn vessels vanished instantly, not destroyed, erased. As if they had never existed, shock spread through the galaxy. Even the Voidborn formation hesitated. Inside the command center, alarms continued flashing. More enemy fleets were arriving. Long-range sensors detected millions of additional contacts emerging from deep space. The first swarm had merely been an advance force. The real invasion was beginning. A young officer looked toward Admiral Kane. "Ma'am, there are too many." Kane stared at the tactical display. The red markers covered entire sectors of the galaxy. The Voidborn numbers were almost impossible to calculate. Then she smiled. "Good." The officer looked confused. Kane pointed toward another section of the display. Suddenly thousands of new blue markers appeared, then tens of thousands. Then hundreds of thousands. Hidden human fleets began emerging from every corner of known space. Secret shipyards, hidden fortresses, deep space defense stations. Humanity's true strength was finally revealing itself. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations watched in disbelief. For centuries, they had underestimated humanity. Now, they were witnessing the result of 200 years of preparation. Every colony, every asteroid base, every hidden facility. Everything had been working toward this single moment. Humanity had not spent centuries preparing for war. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for survival. Meanwhile, Titan pushed deeper into enemy territory. Gigantic energy cannons fired continuously. Entire Voidborn formations collapsed under the assault, yet the enemy kept coming. For every ship destroyed, more appeared from the darkness. The battlefield expanded across multiple star systems. Stars themselves became weapons, planets became shields. The scale of the conflict surpassed anything in galactic history. Then something unexpected happened. Deep within the Voidborn formation, a new signal appeared. The readings were unlike anything previously detected. Even Titan's advanced sensors struggled to analyze it. The object was enormous. Far larger than any ship encountered so far, far larger than Titan itself. Slowly, the darkness parted, and something emerged. A colossal entity surrounded by thousands of escort vessels. Its surface glowed with ancient red symbols. Its body stretched across millions of kilometers. Entire moons orbited around it. Silence fell across human command centers. Scientists stared in horror. Military officers froze. Admiral Kane's expression became serious, because she recognized the threat. The Voidborn had finally deployed one of their leaders. And compared to this monster, everything humanity had fought so far was merely a scouting force. The real war was only beginning. The appearance of the Voidborn leader changed everything. Until now, humanity had been fighting ships. This was something else. The gigantic entity drifted through space with terrifying calm. Entire fleets moved around it like insects surrounding a living god. Its red glow illuminated nearby star systems. Even from millions of kilometers away, sensors struggled to determine where the creature began and where space ended. The object was simply too large, too ancient. Too powerful. Inside Titan's command center, every screen focused on the new threat. Scientists analyzed the incoming data. The results were disturbing. Age estimate, unknown. Energy output beyond measurable limits. Structural composition, unknown. Threat level, maximum. One scientist stared at the report in disbelief. This thing shouldn't exist. Another nodded silently. The laws of known physics could barely explain what they were seeing. Then the entity moved. A single pulse radiated outward from its surface. The effect was immediate. Entire human formations lost power. Communication networks collapsed. Navigation systems failed. Thousands of warships drifted helplessly through space. Panic spread rapidly. For the first time since the war began, humanity was losing control of the battlefield. The Voidborn leader continued advancing. Planet-sized escort vessels followed behind it. Massive gravitational distortions twisted nearby stars. Several planets were pulled from their orbits. Entire solar systems began collapsing into chaos. Civilizations watching the battle realized the horrifying truth. If the creature reached populated space, nothing would survive. Admiral Sarah Kane remained calm. She had expected this possibility. Deep within Project Eclipse's archives existed records recovered from ancient ruins. Warnings left behind by extinct civilizations. The documents described creatures known as Void Sovereigns, living command centers of the Voidborn. Ancient beings responsible for the destruction of countless galaxies. According to the records, no civilization had ever defeated one. Not a single one. Across the Milky Way, fear reached unprecedented levels. Refugee fleets changed course. Governments activated evacuation protocols. Even powerful empires began preparing for extinction. The Void Sovereign represented something beyond war. It represented the end. Then, a secure transmission reached Admiral Kane. The message came from the deepest section of Titan. Omega-level authorization, the highest clearance in human history. Kane opened the file. For several seconds she remained silent. Then she slowly stood. The officers around her watched carefully. "What is it?" one finally asked. Kane looked toward the giant holographic image of the Void Sovereign. Then she answered, "Initiate Protocol Genesis." The room froze. Every officer understood the significance of those words. Protocol Genesis had never been activated. Many believed it was only a myth. A contingency plan reserved for humanity's darkest hour. And now it was being deployed. Across Titan, ancient systems dormant for centuries suddenly awakened, massive energy reserves unlocked. Gigantic internal structures began moving. Deep beneath the artificial world's surface, Colossal chambers opened, one after another. Hundreds, thousands, millions. Something was emerging. Something humanity had hidden even from itself. The final secret of Project Eclipse. The last weapon humanity had ever intended to use. Far away, the Void Sovereign continued its advance, confident, unstoppable, certain of victory. It had destroyed civilizations older than Earth. It had consumed empires greater than the Galactic Council. It had never known defeat. But for the first time in millions of years, it was about to face an opponent unlike any it had ever encountered. And somewhere inside Titan, Protocol Genesis was beginning to wake up. Protocol Genesis awakened with a sound no human ear could truly hear. It wasn't noise, it wasn't energy. It was something deeper, a vibration that seemed to travel through space itself. Across Titan, millions of systems activated simultaneously. Gigantic reactors buried beneath the artificial world's surface roared to life. Ancient power reserves, untouched for generations, flooded into the machine's core. The entire structure began glowing brighter than a star. For the first time since its construction, Titan was operating at full capacity. Inside the command center, officers watched the power readings climb. 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%, then the numbers disappeared entirely. The systems could no longer measure the output. One engineer stared at the display. "That's impossible." Another shook his head. "Not impossible." He looked toward the massive holographic image of Titan. Genesis was never meant to obey normal limits. Meanwhile, the Void Sovereign continued its relentless advance. Entire fleets of Voidborn ships surrounded it. Like a living galaxy of destruction, red energy storms swept across the battlefield. Human warships fought desperately to slow the enemy. Thousands were lost, yet the line held. Every commander understood their mission to buy time, just a little more time. Because Genesis wasn't ready yet, then the first phase began. Deep within Titan, colossal chambers opened. Out of the darkness emerged enormous structures unlike any ship ever built. Observers initially believed they were mobile stations. Then they moved, thousands of kilometers tall, covered in glowing blue energy veins. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy planets. They were not ships, they were Titans within Titan. Humanity called them Guardians. For centuries they had remained hidden, waiting, sleeping, preparing. Now they marched into battle. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Hundreds of Guardian constructs emerged from Titan's interior, then thousands. Each one dwarfing the largest warships ever created. Each one equipped with technology centuries beyond anything known. The Galactic Council fell silent. Even ancient civilizations had never imagined such engineering. Humanity had hidden an entire army inside a world-sized machine. The Voidborn reacted immediately. Massive attack formations changed direction. Millions of enemy vessels surged toward the Guardians. The battle that followed shook nearby star systems. Blue energy beams tore through the darkness. Voidborn fleets exploded into clouds of burning debris. Entire formations disappeared, for the first time since entering the Milky Way. The Voidborn were being pushed back. But the Void Sovereign was not concerned, it simply watched. A wave of crimson energy erupted from its body. The attack crossed millions of kilometers in seconds. 3 Guardians vanished instantly. Not destroyed, erased from existence, the battlefield froze. Human commanders stared in horror. The Sovereign possessed power far beyond previous estimates. Inside Titan, warning alarms activated. Casualty projections skyrocketed. Even with the Guardians, victory remained uncertain. Admiral Kane studied the reports. Then she looked toward the Genesis core. The final phase had not yet begun. Everything so far was merely preparation. The Guardians were only the first layer. The true purpose of Genesis remained hidden. Even now. Far across the battlefield, the Void Sovereign advanced through exploding fleets and burning wreckage. Its red glow illuminated entire sectors of space. Behind it came billions of voidborn vessels at an endless tide, a cosmic nightmare. Yet, for the first time in millions of years, the creature had encountered resistance, real resistance. And somewhere deep inside Titan, a massive sealed chamber slowly opened. A chamber that had never been unlocked before. A chamber containing humanity's greatest creation. The final secret, the final hope, the final weapon. And as ancient mechanisms awakened within the darkness, even Admiral Sarah Kane realized the coming battle would decide far more than the fate of the Milky Way. It would decide whether intelligent life itself had a future. The sealed chamber beneath Titan had remained closed for over 2 centuries. Only a handful of people even knew it existed. And none of them had ever seen what was inside. Now, as Protocol Genesis entered its final stage, the massive doors slowly separated. Kilometer-thick armor plates moved aside. Ancient locking systems disengaged. Energy barriers vanished. For the first time in history, humanity's ultimate secret was revealed. Inside, the chamber floated a single structure. At first glance, it appeared surprisingly small. Compared to Titan, compared to the Guardians, compared to the Void Sovereign, it seemed insignificant. But every scientist in the room immediately understood the truth. The object was not large because it did not need to be. Its power came from something else. Something far more dangerous. The structure resembled a sphere of brilliant white light, surrounded by countless rotating rings. Reality warped around it, space itself bent and twisted. Sensors failed instantly when directed toward it. Even artificial intelligences refused to analyze the object. It was simply too complex, too advanced. Too impossible. A young officer stared at the glowing sphere. "What is it?" No one answered. Then Admiral Kane spoke. "The Continuum Engine." Silence filled the chamber. The name alone carried enormous weight. For generations, rumors of the Continuum Engine had circulated among the highest levels of human government. Most believed it was a myth, a story, a classified legend. They were wrong. Unlike every other weapon humanity had created, the Continuum Engine was never designed to destroy. It was designed to alter reality itself. For centuries, human scientists studied ancient ruins left behind by extinct civilizations. Among the ruins, they discovered fragments of impossible knowledge, evidence that reality was not fixed, that space, time, and matter could be rewritten under specific conditions. The Continuum Engine was the result of that research, humanity's most ambitious project, and humanity's most dangerous mistake. Back on the battlefield, the situation worsened. Voidborn reinforcements continued arriving. Entire Guardian formations were being overwhelmed. Human fleets fought bravely, but losses mounted every minute. The Void Sovereign pushed forward relentlessly. Its crimson energy attack shattered entire defensive lines. Several nearby stars had already been destabilized. If the battle continued much longer, entire sectors of the galaxy could collapse. Inside Titan, Genesis Command reached a decision. The Continuum Engine would be activated immediately. Warnings appeared across every screen. Unknown consequences. Reality instability risk. Temporal cascade probability. Existential failure scenario detected the RAF. No simulation had ever successfully predicted what would happen after activation. But there was no alternative. Without the engine, the galaxy would fall. As technicians entered the final authorization codes, the glowing sphere began changing. The rotating rings accelerated. Brilliant streams of energy spread through Titan. Across the battlefield, every sensor detected the surge. Human fleets noticed it, alien fleets noticed it. Even the Voidborn noticed it. For the first time, the Void Sovereign stopped advancing. It turned toward Titan as if recognizing something. As if remembering something. Then something impossible happened. Ancient symbols suddenly appeared across the Void Sovereign's surface. Symbols that had not been seen for millions of years. Symbols recovered from the same ruins that inspired the Continuum Engine. Scientists watching the feeds froze in shock. The connection was undeniable. The Voidborn knew what the engine was. And for the first time since entering the Milky Way, the Void Sovereign appeared afraid. Inside the chamber, the Continuum Engine reached full power. Space fractured around it. Time rippled like water. Reality trembled. The final countdown began. 10.9.8. Across the galaxy, billions watched. 7.6.5. The Voidborn fleet accelerated toward Titan for 3.2. The Continuum Engine blazed brighter than 1,000 stars. 1. And then reality itself began to break. The moment the Continuum Engine activated, the universe went silent, not metaphorically, literally. Across the battlefield, every sound transmission ceased. Every communication channel died. Every sensor returned the same impossible result: no data. For a fraction of a second, reality itself stopped. Stars froze. Energy beams hung motionless in space. Explosions remained suspended like glowing sculptures. Time had paused. Then it moved again. A massive wave of white light erupted from the Continuum Engine and expanded across the galaxy. The wave passed through Titan first, then through the human fleets, then through the Voidborn Armadas, planets, stars, nebulae. Everything, the light touched every corner of the battlefield. And wherever it passed, reality changed. Inside the command center, officers stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. Entire regions of destroyed space were being restored. Broken warships reappeared. Collapsed stars stabilized. Ancient gravitational scars vanished. It was as if the universe itself was repairing damage. The Continuum Engine wasn't merely generating power. It was rewriting existence. The Voidborn reacted instantly. For the first time since entering the Milky Way, panic spread through their formations. Billions of vessels changed course simultaneously. They were retreating. The galaxy watched in shock. The unstoppable enemy was fleeing, not from Titan, not from the Guardians. From the engine? The Void Sovereign unleashed its full power. A crimson storm larger than entire solar systems erupted from its body. The attack raced toward Titan with enough force to shatter worlds. But before it could strike, the white wave intercepted it. The result stunned everyone. The crimson energy simply disappeared. Not blocked, not absorbed, erased. As though it had never existed. Deep within the engine chamber, warning alarms screamed. Power levels continued climbing. Far beyond safe limits. Scientists struggled to maintain control. Several systems had already failed. Reality distortion spread throughout Titan. Hallways changed shape. Rooms appeared where none existed before. Time flowed differently in different sections of the structure. The engine was becoming unstable. Admiral Kane looked toward the glowing sphere. She finally understood what the ancient civilizations had feared. The Continuum Engine was not a weapon, it was a doorway. A bridge connecting reality to something beyond normal space and time. Humanity had spent centuries believing they controlled it. They were wrong. They had only awakened it. Then the impossible happened. A signal emerged from inside the engine, not a machine signal, not artificial intelligence. A voice, ancient, older than galaxies. The voice echoed through every communication system simultaneously. Every human heard it. Every alien heard it. Even the Voidborn heard it. The message contained only a single sentence. You have awakened the last architect. Silence followed. Across the battlefield, billions froze. No one understood what the words meant. But everyone understood one thing. Something far older than the Voidborn had just spoken. The Void Sovereign reacted immediately. For the first time, genuine terror appeared across its colossal form. Its fleets abandoned the attack entirely. They turned away from Titan and accelerated toward deep space. They weren't retreating from humanity anymore. They were running from whatever existed inside the Continuum Engine. Inside the chamber, the white sphere cracked. A single fracture spread across its surface, then another, then hundreds more. Brilliant energy poured through the cracks. The containment fields failed, the rings shattered, and from within the blinding light, something began to emerge. Something that had been sleeping since before the birth of the Milky Way. The last architect had awakened, and the fate of the universe was about to change forever. The light continued expanding. No one could look directly at it, sensors failed, cameras overloaded. Even TITAN's most advanced systems could not identify what was emerging from the Continuum Engine. The only thing everyone knew was that something impossibly ancient had awakened. Something that should not have existed. Across the battlefield, the Voidborn fled. Entire fleets abandoned their formations. Planet-sized warships changed course. Billions of vessels accelerated toward the edge of the galaxy. The sight stunned every observer. For centuries, the Voidborn had been the nightmare hidden beyond the stars. Now they were behaving like prey, running from a greater predator. Inside the command center, Admiral Kane watched the tactical displays. Every report showed the same impossible result. The Voidborn were no longer attacking, they were escaping. One officer whispered nervously, "What is the last architect?" No one answered because no one knew. Humanity had discovered references to the architects in ancient ruins. Scattered fragments, broken records, half-destroyed warnings. Every civilization that encountered those records reached the same conclusion. The architects had built something so vast that entire galaxies were affected by their work. Then they vanished, leaving behind only mysteries. The white sphere shattered completely. A shockwave rolled across space, yet nothing was destroyed. Instead, stars brightened, nebula changed color. Entire regions of the galaxy seemed more alive than before. Reality itself was responding, as though recognizing the presence of its creator. Then the figure appeared. At first it seemed human. Then observers realized their mistake. The being only resembled a human shape because the mind struggled to comprehend it. Its true form constantly shifted. One moment it appeared as a giant made of living starlight. The next it resembled a galaxy compressed into a single body. Energy flowed around it like rivers of creation. Entire constellations reflected within its luminous surface. The last architect had returned. Every communication system activated simultaneously. Not because the being spoke, because reality translated its presence into meaning. Every species heard the message in its own language. Every mind understood it instantly. The cycle has continued for too long. Billions listened in silence. The Voidborn were created to cleanse failed civilizations. Shock spread throughout the galaxy. The Voidborn weren't invaders. They were tools, weapons. Created by someone. Created by the architects. The revelation shattered everything historians believed. Ancient myths, galactic history, millions of years of assumptions. All wrong. The Voidborn were never the masters. They were servants. Far away, the Void Sovereign stopped fleeing. It turned toward the last architect. The gigantic creature trembled. For millions of years it had been the destroyer of worlds. Now it faced its creator. The architect raised one hand. Space itself became silent, stars dimmed. Time slowed. The Void Sovereign released a desperate crimson blast powerful enough to destroy entire star clusters. The attack crossed the battlefield, then vanished, not blocked, not resisted. Simply érasé. As though reality refused to allow harm near the architect, fear spread through the remaining Voidborn fleets. Their formations collapsed, command structures failed. For the first time in countless ages, the galaxy witnessed something unimaginable. The Voidborn were losing. But Admiral Kane noticed something disturbing. The architect wasn't celebrating. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even focused on the Voidborn. Its attention was fixed somewhere beyond the Milky Way, far beyond, toward the darkness between galaxies. And for the first time since awakening, the last architect looked concerned. Then it spoke again. Its voice echoed through existence itself. The true enemy is coming. Silence followed. Even the fleeing Voidborn froze. The galaxy had spent centuries fearing the Voidborn. Humanity had spent 200 years preparing to fight them. Now the architects were saying the Voidborn were not the real threat. They were only the first warning. And somewhere in the endless darkness beyond the known universe, something far worse had begun to move. The architect's warning spread across the galaxy within minutes. The true enemy is coming. Those 5 words shattered every sense of victory. Only moments earlier, civilizations had celebrated the collapse of the Voidborn invasion. Now fear returned stronger than ever, if the Voidborn were merely servants. What kind of force had created them? And what kind of enemy could frighten the last architect itself? Across the battlefield, the fleeing Voidborn suddenly stopped. Billions of vessels froze in place. The Void Sovereign remained motionless, its crimson glow weakened. For the first time, humanity saw the creature not as a conqueror, but as something else, a soldier, a guardian, a weapon built for a purpose. Inside Titan, Admiral Kane received a direct transmission. The sender had no origin point, no signal source. No identifiable technology. The message came directly from the architect. A single request: come. Moments later, Kane found herself standing within a strange realm, not physically, mentally. A place beyond ordinary space. A place filled with stars suspended in an endless white ocean. And waiting there stood the last architect. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Kane asked the question everyone wanted answered: what is the true enemy? The architect looked toward a distant darkness beyond the stars. Its luminous form flickered. Even now, the memory seemed painful. Finally, it answered: the Devourers. Immediately, ancient images appeared around them. Entire galaxies burning, stars collapsing into darkness. Civilizations erased from existence, not conquered, consumed. The scenes unfolded one after another, each more terrifying than the last. Kane watched billions of worlds vanish, ancient races disappear. Even the architects themselves falling before an unstoppable force. The Devourers do not seek territory, the architect explained. They do not seek power. They seek silence. Kane frowned. Silence. The architect nodded. Life creates complexity. Complexity creates possibility. The Devourers exist to erase possibility. The words sent chills through her. The enemy wasn't trying to rule the universe. It was trying to end it. Not through destruction alone, but by removing every intelligent civilization capable of changing the future. Back in real space, telescopes across the galaxy suddenly detected something impossible. Beyond the edge of the local group of galaxies, entire regions of the universe were disappearing. Not darkening, not exploding, disappearing, as if pieces of reality itself were being erased. Scientists rushed to verify the data again and again. The results never changed. Something enormous was approaching. The architect continued speaking. Millions of years ago, we built the Voidborn to prepare civilizations. To force them to grow stronger, to unite against a common threat. Kane stared in disbelief. The Voidborn invasions were tests. Brutal, cruel, unforgivable, but tests nonetheless. The architects had hoped strong civilizations would emerge. Civilizations capable of surviving the Devourers. And did any survive? Kane asked quietly. The architect remained silent for several seconds, then answered, no. The single word hit harder than any weapon. Countless civilizations. Countless galaxies. Every one of them had failed. Then something unexpected happened. The architect turned toward Kane. For the first time, hope appeared within its cosmic eyes. Until now. Across the galaxy, human fleets regrouped. Alien civilizations united. Former enemies fought side by side. The Voidborn themselves stood down. The war that had seemed impossible only days earlier was over. A far greater conflict awaited. Suddenly, alarms activated throughout Titan. Long-range sensors detected a massive disturbance beyond intergalactic space. The readings dwarfed anything previously recorded. Even larger than the Void Sovereign, larger than Titan, larger than entire star systems. The first Devourer had arrived. Far beyond the Milky Way, a gigantic shadow emerged from the darkness between galaxies, no shape, no clear form. Just an endless absence consuming everything around it. Stars vanished wherever it passed. Light disappeared. Space collapsed. Reality itself unraveled. The architect looked toward the approaching darkness. Its expression became grim, for the first time since Awakening. It prepared for battle. And humanity finally understood why Project Eclipse had truly been built, not to save a galaxy, not to defeat the Voidborn, but to stand beside the architects in the final war for the future of existence itself. The arrival of the first Devourer changed the universe. Every telescope, every sensor, every observation network across the Milky Way focused on the same impossible image. A region of absolute darkness advancing through intergalactic space, no stars. No radiation, no matter. Nothing survived within its path. It wasn't merely destroying reality. It was consuming it. Panic erupted throughout countless worlds. Scientists struggled to explain what they were seeing. Some believed it was a living entity. Others argued it was a natural cosmic phenomenon. The architect ended the debate with a single sentence. "It is alive." Silence followed. The darkness moving toward the galaxy was not an event. It was a creature. Inside Titan, emergency councils assembled human leaders, alien rulers, Voidborn commanders. For the first time in history, every major power sat together not as enemies, not as rivals, because they all understood one terrifying truth. If the Devourers reached the Milky Way, there would be no second chance. The last architect stood above the gathering. Its cosmic form illuminated the enormous chamber. Entire galaxies shimmered within its body, yet even it appeared troubled. Admiral Kane stepped forward. "Can we stop it?" The architect remained silent. Several seconds passed. Finally, it answered, "We can fight." The room grew cold. That was not the same as victory. Across known space, humanity initiated the largest mobilization in history. Every shipyard activated. Every defense network awakened. Every colony contributed resources. Titan-class factories began producing warships at unimaginable speed. Even former enemies joined the effort. The survival of existence itself had become the mission. Meanwhile, the Voidborn revealed a shocking truth. For millions of years they had fought the Devourers alone. Every civilization they tested, every galaxy they monitored, every war they initiated, all had been preparation. The Voidborn were never conquerors, they were guardians, harsh guardians, ruthless guardians, but guardians nonetheless. The revelation stunned the galaxy. Ancient monsters once blamed for countless extinctions had actually been holding back something far worse. History itself had been misunderstood. Then long-range sensors detected a second anomaly, and a third, and a fourth. Scientists quickly realized the horrifying reality. The approaching darkness was not a single devourer. It was merely the scout. Behind it came an entire swarm. Thousands of them, moving through the void between galaxies. Each one large enough to consume star systems. Each one capable of erasing reality itself. Fear spread faster than ever before. Even veteran military commanders lost confidence. The numbers were impossible. No fleet could fight that. No civilization could survive it. Then the architect did something unexpected. It extended both arms toward the stars. Ancient energy rippled through space. Hidden structures began awakening across the galaxy. Massive constructs buried inside dead stars. Ancient stations hidden within black holes. Forgotten megastructures concealed beyond any Beulah, the architect's old defenses, built millions of years ago. Waiting for this exact moment. One by one, they activated. Thousands of colossal installations illuminated the darkness. Ancient weapons larger than planets, reality anchors, dimensional shields, stellar cannons. Technology beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. The galaxy finally witnessed the true power of the architects. Yet even as those ancient defenses awakened, the architect remained uneasy. Its gaze stayed fixed on the approaching swarm. Because it knew something no one else did. These defenses had failed before, millions of years ago. Entire galaxies had fallen despite them. Far beyond the Milky Way, the first Devourer accelerated. The darkness expanded, stars vanished, space collapsed. Reality screamed. The final war was approaching faster than expected. And for the first time since the beginning of recorded history, every civilization in existence stood together beneath a single banner. Not empire, not species, not ideology. Survival. Then a new alert appeared on Titan's central display. A signal had emerged from beyond the Devourer swarm. A signal older than the architects themselves. The last architect stared at it. And for the first time, it looked afraid. The signal spread through the galaxy in seconds. Every major sensor array detected it. Every ancient architect installation reacted to it. Even the Devourers paused. For a brief moment, the universe itself seemed to listen. Inside Titan, scientists struggled to decode the transmission. The data contained no recognizable language. No mathematics. No energy pattern known to any civilization. Yet the lost architect immediately recognized it. Its luminous form dimmed. The billions watching across the galaxy saw something they never thought possible. The architect was afraid. Admiral Kane stepped forward. "What is it?" The architect remained silent for several moments. Then it answered. "Singnami." The origin, the chamber fell silent. No one had ever heard the term before. But the architect's tone carried a weight that chilled every soul present. Millions of years ago, before the first galaxies formed, before the architects existed, there had been another civilization. A civilization so advanced that reality itself was their technology. They could create stars, design universes, shape the laws of physics like artists shaping clay. The architects were descendants of their knowledge. The Voidborn were descendants of their weapons. Everything that existed today could trace its origins back to them. They were known only as the Origin Makers. According to ancient records, the Origin Makers vanished long before recorded cosmic history. Most believed they had become extinct. Others believed they had transcended existence itself. No one knew the truth. Until now. The signal continued growing stronger. And with every passing second, impossible things began happening. Across the galaxy, dead stars reignited, ancient ruins activated. Collapsed wormholes reopened, reality itself seemed to awaken. Something was responding to the signal, something ancient, something hidden. Far beyond the approaching Devourer swarm, space suddenly split apart. A crack appeared in the darkness, then another, then thousands. The fractures spread across millions of light years. The sight was so enormous that entire galaxies looked small beside it. Scientists watching the event struggled to breathe. Their instruments could barely process the scale. Then the darkness opened, and a structure emerged. Not a ship, not a creature, a machine. A machine so vast that galaxies appeared like sparks around it. Its surface shimmered with cosmic energy. Entire star clusters orbited inside transparent layers of impossible geometry. The object dwarfed everything humanity had ever imagined. Even the Devourers seemed insignificant compared to it. The last architect lowered its head, not in fear, in respect. For the first time, humanity understood. The architects had not been the builders of the universe. They had been caretakers. Students, successors. The true builders had returned. Across the battlefield, the Devourer swarm reacted violently. Thousands of reality-consuming entities accelerated toward the giant structure. As if desperate to destroy it before it fully awakened, the war had entered a new phase. a phase beyond anything humanity had prepared for. Suddenly, the machine halts, an explosion of energy. Justa pulse. The effect was immediate. Hundreds of Devourers vanished. Entire sections of darkness disappeared. Reality repaired itself behind them. Stars returned. Light returned. Space healed. The galaxy erupted in disbelief. Nothing had ever harmed the Devourers so easily. Nothing. Then a new message echoed across existence. Not from the architects, not from the origin machine. From somewhere even deeper to older but more powerful. A voice that seemed to come from the universe itself. Every living being heard the same words. The final cycle begins. Silence followed. Even the origin machine stopped moving. Even the last architect looked toward the darkness, because whatever had spoken was older than the origin makers, older than the architects, older than the universe they knew. And at the far edge of existence, beyond galaxies, beyond time, beyond reality itself, something opened its eyes. The eyes that opened beyond reality were not the eyes of a creature, they were the eyes of existence itself. For billions of years, civilizations had searched for answers. Who created the universe? Why did life exist? Why did galaxies form? Why did time move forward? Now, standing at the edge of the final cycle, humanity was about to discover the truth. The cosmic voice spoke once more. Every star, every planet, every living being heard it. I am the first dream. The words echoed across reality. The last architect lowered its head. The origin machine became motionless. Even the Devourers stopped advancing. Everything listened. Before there were galaxies, before there was space, before there was time, there had only been the first dream. A consciousness so vast that reality itself emerged from its imagination. Universes were not built, they were dreamed. Existence was not created, it was imagined. Every star that ever burned, every civilization that ever lived, every moment that ever happened, all were part of a single dream stretching across eternity. Humanity struggled to comprehend the revelation. It was too large, too impossible, yet somehow it felt true. The universe itself was alive, and it had been watching always. The first dream revealed the purpose of the cycles. Every universe eventually reached a point of stagnation. Civilizations stopped growing, possibilities disappeared, creation slowed. When that happened, a cycle began. The Voidborn tested civilizations, the architects guided them. The origin makers preserved knowledge, and the Devourers erased what could not survive. The process repeated endlessly, universe after universe, cycle after cycle, for ages beyond counting. But something had changed. Humanity. The first dream turned its attention toward Earth, toward the small blue world that had once been mocked by the galaxy. A world that had been considered insignificant, primitive, weak. Yet humanity had done something no civilization in any previous cycle had achieved. They had united enemies. They had inspired hope. They had chosen cooperation over domination. They had stood against extinction not for themselves alone, but for everyone. The architect stepped forward. Is the cycle ending? For the first time, the first dream answered immediately. Yes. Across the universe, reality began changing. The Devourers dissolved into starlight, their purpose fulfilled. The Voidborn transformed, their ancient programming finally released. The architects smiled for the first time in millions of years. The long war was over. Then the first dream made an offer. Not to the architects, not to the origin makers. To humanity. Will you become the guardians of the next stage? Silence filled existence. Every civilization watched. Every world waited. Admiral Sarah Kane looked toward Earth, toward the countless lives that had struggled, dreamed, failed, and risen again. Then she smiled. The answer represented everything humanity had ever been, everything humanity could become. Yes. The moment the word was spoken, the universe erupted with light. New stars ignited, dead galaxies awakened. Entire regions of reality transformed. A new age began. An age without cycles, without extinction, without endless fear. And so the galaxy remembered not the size of humanity's fleets, not the power of Titan, not the Continuum Engine, not even the defeat of the Devourers. It remembered a simple truth. The galaxy laughed at humanity, until Earth unleashed the one thing nobody expected: hope. Humanity was never the strongest species in the galaxy. Humanity was the species that refused to give up. And sometimes, that is more powerful than any weapon in the universe. Thank you for joining Irongeist HFY. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and prepare for the next journey among the stars.